We're live in 3, 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. LeatherBrainz, episode 229. Scotty and I were just talking if that was right. I guess it's right. 229. We're going to go with it. I think we could just make this up. I don't think anybody's going to check us on this, but 229 feels right. We've been keeping track for you. It's a lot of episodes, but we are here with you this week. You'll notice it's just your two favorite of the LeatherBrainz crew. You have myself, Alan Casanova Castro, and I have Scotty Del Rey here. We're still missing part of the trio here. Slapdog is still gallivanting around on his honeymoon. He will be back. He's also moving. I don't know. It's like, where in the world is Slapdog? I think is probably a segment we should have, and we just talk about where in the world we think he is. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I can list, well, I can't list off the top of my head, but if you give me a map, I'll find, 200 or 300 strip clubs he could possibly be at any given moment. He's kind of a degen, so I don't know. Casinos, strip clubs.
Yeah.
I don't know, places where they sell firearms that the serial numbers have been filed off of. Any of those things I could see him doing.
Honestly, I'm surprised he went like with the coffee industry as like his main mode. I figured he was going to open strip clubs. That's where I felt like Viking themed strip clubs.
You know what's interesting about the coffee industry? I know it's 2025 and like anybody else, I pay with a card everywhere I go. But if there was one industry where you could maybe feasibly launder money, maybe coffee, $2 or $3, whatever. Yeah, something small that you get a lot of customers to pay a small amount. That seems like prime money laundering.
Maybe. Anyways, we don't have Slap Talk. It's still just the two of us. We are running without a teacher or parent to look over us, so God knows what we're going to get into. We have a good show for you this week. It's still the off season. We're having to dig up conversations, topics. There's stuff to noodle on, but by and large, we're just kind of holding on tight until we get into the football season. I think today marks the 2 month until the college season starts. So we're like 2 months away from like football starting, which means camps are starting, everything's starting here rather quickly. So we'll get into it. We got some updates for some teams. We're going to get into some bold predictions ahead of the 2025 season. So Scotty and I will be noodling on what we think is most likely and least likely to happen based on a tweet that was sent out via NFL.com. So got a good episode. So let's just dive right on in, shall we? You may have seen some clips last week. Lamar Jackson was advocating for the signing of Jaire Alexander as he was said bye-bye by the Green Bay Packers, and the Ravens granted him that wish. Do we think it was solely because Lamar Jackson said he wanted Jaire Alexander? But I don't know, maybe. But this is quite the signing for that defense. You think about the AFC and you think about all the firepower, and now this Ravens defense adds another key component to that secondary.
Yeah, the question for me is, we've all kind of routinely been discussing the Ravens, and all of us recognize that the Ravens are obviously a top-tier team in the NFL. They are very capable of winning each and every week. But we all have kind of fallen, and correct me if I'm wrong, I might be assuming this about you, but we all have kind of fallen in the same camp, which is like, if I had to pick my list of 3 or 4 top potential Super Bowl winners in 2025, 2026, I don't know if the Ravens are up there. Like, I've seen Lamar Jackson kind of collapse in the postseason. I know he's great. I know there's a lot of talent on the team, but it's just like, I don't know, it feels like everything kind of has to go right for them to be able to do that. But the more I look at this roster, the more you look at this defense, the defense is going to be, especially the secondary, is going to be stellar this year. And maybe that's enough to keep Lamar Jackson from having to put the team on his back in the postseason. Maybe they're going to be able to hold their opponents to, lower point totals and get a lot of those wins that have been tough for them in recent seasons. So I guess, the addition of Jaire is another piece to this already pretty damn good defense. And then, of course, they have all their weapons on offense. What's your outlook for the Ravens this season?
I think you hit the nail on the head with, I think it's more about your confidence. I think if you're to load this team up on Madden and you're to sim a season, you're like, wow, they have all the components you want. They have, an all-pro quarterback, have an all-pro running back. They have weapons at wide receiver. Their defense is solid. Interesting enough, the question mark is the thing that probably they hung their hat on, and that was at kicker. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, here's a wrinkle. We did not expect this to happen. Well, he was, trying to get touched by the massage therapists. Justin Tucker has now found himself out of a job. So I think that's a question mark. But I think you're right. I think it's their ability to perform in the clutch in when you have to have it. And this team has not shown you as a collective that they can do that. And I think last year you saw, because that game was in Buffalo, wasn't it? The Ravens. And you saw Lamar, like, he fumbled it. He had to, like, fumbled the ball inexplicably. He threw picks. He threw the ball over people's head. You had who was it that dropped the ball on the goal line?
Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews, who was sure-handed. Like, it seemed like everybody collectively just, like, shit the bed for them. But that seems to be the tale for the Ravens. I think the thing with the Ravens is they do have, like, lapses in judgment where they, like, lose to teams. You're like, how on God's green earth did you lose to that team? And I think this happened last year when the Raiders got them early in the year, and you're like, what? Like, how did you lose to the Raiders? And I think that's the problem with this Ravens team, and why you probably don't put them up in the top 2 or 3 contenders is slowly just because you don't trust them yet. You don't trust them to deliver when you need it. And honestly, there's probably only like a couple teams you probably trust to do that, or you'd have faith in. I don't know how you feel, but, like, I would trust Joe Burrow if he's in that spot to go win a game, because you have to have seen them do it, and until you see somebody do it, it's prove it territory. And I think the Ravens are still sitting there in that prove it territory.
You know what Lamar Jackson reminds me of? This just came to me, and I think this might be the best thought I've ever had. So,
I love this.
Not to set the standards too high.
I love this.
I'm a Rockets fan. You know what Lamar Jackson reminds me of is prime James Harden on the Rockets, where it's like each and every week, each and every game, you're like, this dude is incredible. Like, he is just doing things that I didn't know were possible. And then you get to the postseason, and it's like a totally different player. Like, all confidence is right out the window. It's so infuriating as a Rockets fan, or it was infuriating then. But as a Ravens fan, you just got to be so frustrated, because Ravens fans, they're like, I'm not taking any quarterback over Lamar Jackson. They all love Lamar Jackson, as they should. They're not taking anybody over him. But it's just they haven't gotten over the hump. Honestly, I'm talking myself into it a little bit and a little bit more. They're a team that's so good, no one's going to be surprised if they're competing for a Super Bowl. But it's also one of those things that it's like, I'm not putting my money on them. I'm not going to put my money on them.
The time I want to get back to that Rockets conversation for a second. But before I do that, I think the time for the Ravens when they we probably had the most confidence to do it was 2 years ago when they got the Chiefs in Baltimore. Yeah. And the Chiefs were obviously, like, still limping. I mean, for the last 3 years, the Chiefs have been, like, limping along, waiting for somebody to basically knock them out. And the Eagles did it in the Super Bowl, unfortunately, for the Chiefs. But I think for that Ravens team, like, that was it. Everything was building up to that point. We got them. We got the 1 seed. We got the Chiefs, at the bank. We can do it. And they still couldn't do it. And then they had to go to Buffalo. And you're like, good luck beating the Bills in Buffalo. And then you're like, yeah, that's about what we thought. Like, you're going to screw this up at the most inopportune times. I just don't know when this window closes. Everybody's windows closes. You just never know when it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And for this Ravens team, you just don't know.
That's one of the things. Your comparison to the Chiefs is great, because as Chiefs fans, we recognize that for the last 3 years, once Tyreek Hill left, it was all just kind of like the offense was just shoved together, and, like, hopefully it worked out. Defense has been great, luckily, but it's sort of like the regular season is just like going through the motions. Like, I don't care how many wins we have in the regular season. As long as we make it to the postseason, we're going to be competing for a Super Bowl. And that's what Chiefs fans feel like. Ravens fans feel the exact opposite, which is interesting because they're both, top tier teams. But Ravens fans are like, I know we're going to make it to the postseason, but dear God, what is going to happen then? And and it's just like a weird dichotomy. And that maybe shows the difference in level between a team like the Ravens and a team like the Chiefs, or a team even like the Bengals when they're doing well. Like, there are just certain players, certain teams that you're just like, yeah, they're going to get it done. And I don't feel that way about the Ravens.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. Okay, now I'm going back to the Rockets comment. You got Kevin Durant now.
Yeah,
how do you feel? This is not an NBA podcast, but for anybody listening, we're going to take a quick break since Slapdog's not here. We're going to talk NBA since Scotty brought it up. So, NBA season just ended last night. The Thunder took home the championship.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, Halliburton for the Pacers. I don't know if you're watching. Tore his Achilles. Oh, that was disgusting. He was feeling himself. He was on fire to start. Halliburton. So if you didn't watch, Halliburton, star player for the Indiana Pacers, tears his Achilles in the first quarter, and he still had the most 3-pointers made in that game.
Yeah, that's crazy. The dude's a beast. I still a side note to the side note now. Like we're getting into
this
like
NBA podcast.
Yeah. we're getting into like what's the show where everybody falls asleep a bunch of times and keeps going deeper and deeper into dreams?
Oh yeah, it's Inception.
Inception.
Yes, we are Inception.
This is an Inception situation.
Love this.
But side note to the side note. Damn. Now I forgot my side note. I was explaining what the side note was, and I forgot what it was.
See, your brain can only push so much content before it runs out.
Anyways,
so Durant to the Rockets. That'll be interesting. Rockets played really well, but I like your analogy of Lamar to Harden, because I think that's it. Like, there's a lot of regular season success and not a lot of postseason success. You're like, all right, when I need to have it, you can't give it to me. You know what I mean? Like, the regular season's great, but now, that's where everything's made. I think the interesting sidebar to that is, like, an NFL fan. Like, this is what I talk about. Like, it's honestly kind of fun to do the hunting rather than being the hunted. Because like, it's kind of fun to see your team build up. Like, that's why I'm like very jealous of where Broncos fans are right now, because it's like they got a little taste of something. There's some hype. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it doesn't. Whatever. If it doesn't, we've sucked anyways. So who cares? So it's like, basically it's all positive at this point, versus like, if you're a Bills fan, if you're a Chiefs fan, if you're a Ravens fan, if you're an Eagles fan, there is one thing that you are hanging your hat on, and that's it. And if you miss that, it's seen as a failure. And I think that kind of sucks as a fan when you're stuck.
It really does. Well, last year is a perfect example for us as Chiefs fans, where this is a team that just struggled. It struggled all season long, and they still found a way to make it to the top, get to the Super Bowl. They get smoked in the Super Bowl, so that doesn't help. But it's like, there's a team who made it to the big dance again, and it just feels like a total failure. Even though we're one of the best teams in football.
The 3-time defending AFC champion, and it feels like a failure. You've won the Super Bowl 2 out of 3 years, but it feels like a failure because you didn't win the most recent one. I think that's the cruelest thing about sports. Really quickly, because we're going to sidebar, because now I want to compare other NBA players to NFL players, because I don't know if you follow along on Twitter, somebody will be like, can you explain this in NBA terms whenever something happens, because like people don't cross over. So we're going to say Lamar Jackson's like James Harden. Is that what we're saying?
Yep, I think so.
Okay. Josh Allen, what's his equivalent in the NBA right now? And I don't
no championships.
Yeah, so it's got to be somebody that's really, really good, MVP player with no titles.
So like
that's tough.
With no titles is really tough.
Let's do this.
Maybe like the injuries kind of screwed up, but like a Joel Embiid kind of comes to mind.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't fit exactly, and the injuries now dominate the whole thing about him.
I know that. The injuries notwithstanding, I would agree. Or like a Russell Westbrook, he's won an MVP. He's been solid. He's never been able to win a title. I think that one's super interesting. What about Mahomes? Because I have a comp for him in general. But what do you think Mahomes is?
Does it have to be right now in the NBA?
I would say or fairly recent, because sometimes it's hard to do a 1-for-1.
Mahomes is arguably the GOAT. So obviously you look at Jordan, you look at LeBron. I think Mahomes, the aura is more like Kobe.
Okay. I could
just
see
one of the best ever, and he's a little goofier than Kobe was, but it's like one of the best ever, and you just, when you see him, like, you know what you're getting. Like, this guy's going to come out, he's going to ball, he's going to do whatever he can to win.
See, legacy-wise, what I'm thinking, and you can tell me if I'm way off base, is I think Mahomes is like LeBron, and Tom Brady is like Jordan.
Yeah.
Where it's this like,
I think
where it's like, hey, he's got more titles, and he's won the most, and he's been really good, and you look and you're like, just like what he can do on the football field, I never saw the other person do, which, I'm a Jordan fan, so this pains for me to admit, but it's like physically, you never saw somebody do this or like put up the stats that they do.
Yeah.
But everybody's going to point towards the titles or like, oh, look, see, he can't be that. Or to the detriment, be like, look, he's already lost 2 Super Bowls. And it's like, yeah, you're failing to also acknowledge how, like, when LeBron went to like 6-7 straight NBA finals or some stupid thing where he's just like always there. You're like, okay, you're failing to admit that like even getting there is an accomplishment in and of itself. But that's kind of where that's where I would put Mahomes. So where do we put?
I think that's the basic one, is that you'd put him with the LeBron James conversation, which, even you mentioned like the losses. Okay, football is a totally different animal than basketball. Basketball, you got 5 dudes on your team on the court, and it's a star-driven league. Like, one guy can score 50 points and put the team on his back. You can't do that in football.
Yeah.
Like, you can do it to a degree, but there's
tough.
only so much.
It's super tough. Okay, last one. Joe Burrow. What is his NBA? What is his NBA equivalent?
Joe Burrow. Jokic, maybe?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that because he's super
with
solid.
The recent championship withstanding, but
yeah. I think he's because he's super solid. He's just going out there being a guy. I could see that. Okay, we'll continue the NBA talk. We'll start the NBA podcast up here in just a little bit. Hard pivot from we have Joe Burrow and Mahomes and Josh Allen. We're going to pivot right to Anthony Richardson news. Which is probably like the worst pivot of all time. All right. So I think this was directed at me. The notes say he's expected to be ready for training camp. And is it still over for him? I think I famously said a few episodes, it's over. He's dead. That's it. I guess, am I supposed to answer this question rather quickly and then let you react to it? How do you want to do this one,
I'll just react to the question because I was gone the episode where you said that, and I was listening to it in my car, and I was nodding along like a MAGA hat wearing guy listening to Sean Hannity. I was like, hell yeah, like spit it to me, bro.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I agreed with you 100%. I've been saying it for a long time that Anthony Richardson is just his one upside is his physicality, and if he can't stay healthy, that completely negates that one upside. So it's like, it is what it is. But basically what this is saying is everyone, the news now is that he's going to be ready for training camp. And does that make a difference? Is he still done?
Is he ready for training camp and is he 100% for training camp? I feel like are two different things.
Yeah.
Like he could be ready for training camp but not be 100%. And I think that's the problem. I don't know when you've ever going to get 100% Anthony Richardson again moving forward.
Yeah, and honestly, we've seen him 100% several times. That doesn't stop him from getting injured again.
Right.
So it's like, it doesn't matter.
And even when he is at 100%, it's not like he's playing at some MVP level.
Yeah, it's more about the pattern. I mean, you can get injured once, you can get injured twice, but if it's happening to you over and over and over and over again, like there's clearly something wrong, whether it's a pain tolerance issue or the strength training is fucked up or your technique is fucked up to the point where you're putting yourself in these bad situations. Like, I don't know. You look at him and you think that guy's a tank. He can take a lot of abuse, but so far there's just no indication that that's true. And again, that's his one upside. If he can't exploit that, then he's done.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just, and you hate to see it because there's really talented players that just couldn't stay healthy. And I mean, that just happens. That's the reality of sports, especially a physically demanding sport like football. It's like, that's just, that kind of happens. It just sucks. It sucks that it happens, but it happens. And people like to think you can just play games and you can turn injuries off when you're playing those games, but you can't. It's part of the sport, you know?
Well, for everyone who feels bad for Anthony Richardson, take a look at me. I'm not even good enough to be considered to be a quarterback in the NFL. So, my life is way sadder. Just keep that in mind.
There we go. Just a little bit of perspective for you on this episode. You could be Scotty. All right. In other training camp news, a couple big pieces for Kansas City's offense are expected to be ready. Rashee Rice hurt his knee last year in one of the most bizarre plays you've ever seen, where Mahomes threw an interception, went to go tackle the guy that he threw the pick to, and then took out Rashee Rice's knee, which was probably like insult to injury. I still don't know how that's handled in the locker room. Like if I'm Rashee Rice, I'm like, come on, man. Like you're the reason I'm in this. Like you threw a terrible pass and then you took me out for the season. Like it was my fault. But he's expected to be ready. And then the Chiefs' first round pick tackle, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, who was injured, is also expected to be ready. A lot of people speculated he fell so late in the first round was just because of injury concerns, but it sounds like he is also going to be ready for training camp. Scotty, what do you think this does for the Chiefs' offense? One that you just spoke about recently has just kind of been pittering along. Like, what does this do for their offense heading into next season?
Well, listen, this offense with a healthy receiver, there's receiver talent on the team. We just haven't had it on the field for 3 years. That's just the way we've been fighting through all these different, second-rate wide receivers to just try and keep the offense afloat for so long now. And now we have a group of guys who could actually put up, early early career Mahomes numbers. I think maybe not to the degree of Tyreek Hill, but I think as a group, this is a team that can really take a step forward on the offensive side of the ball. But it all comes down to the offensive line. We saw all last season Patrick Mahomes running for his life, and honestly, for the last couple seasons, you've seen his numbers look way worse than what you're used to. Partly because, or majorly because, he's just not able to sit in the pocket and make decisions. He's just got to run around. And he's great at improvising, but you can't improvise every play. Like, it's just, you're not going to be able to do that at the highest level. So it really just comes down to, people like Josh Simmons, who I hope is awesome and I hope dominates the league. I've heard the same things that, the only reason he fell so far is just because of the injury concerns and his recent injury. And so maybe he comes out and he plays like a top 5 draft pick. That'd be great. But it really is just going to come down to how well this offensive line can perform, because it has been very, very bad over the last year or two.
Yeah, I agree. I think the recipe for beating Mahomes over his whole career is basically, can you get pressure on him without blitzing? Because if you blitz him or you give him a gap, he will find it. And so that's where teams started making their hay, was like, okay, you know what? We're going to drop back in this umbrella coverage and we're going to let our front four go do work. And you saw that play out in the Super Bowl where it was like, front four, we're getting pressure. He has to scramble. He's throwing late. Well, everybody's back watching. So you're good luck completing anything. And so I agree. I think it's puzzling. That's one of the things the Chiefs have not nailed or gotten right is, protecting your star player, and they haven't, but thank God his ability to improvise has kind of saved them, and to his detriment, I think, developed bad habits with the offense. With the receiving core, for those listening, you're not familiar with the Chiefs receiving core right now, it's slated to be, you're going to have Rashee Rice, you're going to have Hollywood Brown, you're going to have Xavier Worthy. And then, Kelsey came back for his final year and he lost some weight, potentially slim and trim. So we'll see what this receiving core looks like, because they were not together at all last year. Without taking out Kelsey, they were not together. Those three on the field at the same time did not happen. Hollywood Brown went out, broke his collarbone during a preseason game, and then Rashee Rice, obviously with his knee, and then Hollywood Brown came back but hadn't played forever. And so it's like, how impactful could he have been? Who knows? And so I think health, we talk about health, and I think that's probably one of the more remarkable things about this Chiefs run is just their ability to navigate the health issues. So we'll see if they can continue to do it. They obviously have to shore up some things on the offensive line. I think the one thing the NFL does not want to see is Mahomes with time. And if they can give him time, then that's, I feel like, a recipe for ultimate disaster. And we'll talk about some futures and some bold predictions for the 2025 season, but I think that's going to largely play into whether or not some things come to fruition is that offensive line. Last piece of news here before we jump to our bold predictions. Jets signed kicker Harrison Mevis. Is it Mevis or Mevis? I'm gonna go Mevis. I'm gonna go with Mevis. We don't honestly do a lot of kicker news, and that's a shame on us. But we're bringing you this kicker news because he is signed from the UFL's Birmingham Stallions. Harrison is affectionately known as the thicker kicker.
Thicker kicker.
He's the thicker kicker. Now, before we go into this any further, Scotty, are we sure this isn't another one of those things where you believed a fake story, or is this guy actually real?
Well, let me tell you, the fake story came from X.com, the everything app, where you get propaganda and porn and murder videos and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I should have been more skeptical. This story came from NFL.com. So if they fooled me here, they fooled a lot of people over the big wigs in NFL, well, not NFL execs, but people at NFL.com. So I won't feel as bad.
Okay. Won't feel as bad.
I read that the thicker kicker, actually, he was in the NFL last year. I think he was with the Panthers last year. And then, eventually moved over to the UFL and then made a whole shitload of field goals. And they're like, all right.
Okay, did you look up his weight?
I did not look up
his
weight.
Don't look it up. Don't look it up. I'm going to give you... No, I'm not even going to give you a plus minus. Give me what you think his weight is, and you win this hypothetical no money bet here if you get within 5 pounds. All right, we'll say 2 pounds.
2 pounds?
5 pounds.
Oh.
5 pounds. Okay. Within plus or minus 5 pounds. How thick do you think the thicker kicker is?
Well, I think he's thick as shit, but that's not a numerical value, so I don't know.
He's 5'11".
Good answer.
He went to, it looks like Missouri. So I don't know if this is giving you, any context. Well, how thick would you be like, wow, that actually is a thick kicker?
So I think that this is a little bit of a trick question because I don't think, like, normally if you'd ask me, oh, wow, that guy is fucking huge, I would say like 300 pounds. But we're talking about kickers. Most kickers are pretty small.
Yeah.
And 5'11", he's average height, so I don't think he's going to weigh a huge amount. So I think back to like when I played football, we had a kicker that was kind of a big guy, and he weighed like 220 when we were, 17. So
Fair.
I think now if you're an adult, 250 would be my guess.
Oh, you're very close. His listed weight, and this is, I don't know how, like a box of Twinkies tips the scale one way or the other. He's listed at 243 pounds, which for 5'11", like, I mean,
that's thick. That's
thick. That's a thick one. And I'm looking at some pictures here, and I mean, it's proportionate. Like, it's not all in his leg either. So he's just kind of out there vibing. He definitely knows how to party. He screams a guy that, like, I know how to party. That's just when I look at it.
Like, I'll throw a picture of his face up so all the brainiacs can see too. But he just kind of looks like a nerdy guy.
Yeah, kickers,
he looks like a nice guy. I'm sure he's great.
I would say kickers in general don't look like what you think they would, or they don't look like, some dapper don out there just vibing. They kind of look nerdy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess
they look like us.
But
we would be.
If
kickers.
the nickname is THICCER KICKER, I expected him to be like, yeah. I mean, to have an aura about him. He doesn't really have the aura.
No, I don't know. Maybe we should try to get him on the show and we can talk about it. But anyways, that is the Jets' new kicker. I don't think I don't know how agile he is, if he's going to have to make any tackles at all, but he is their kicker. So we'll keep you up to date on his stats, I guess. Maybe we should do that. We should adopt him as our sponsored player and see if we can't get him on the podcast. Maybe that's our mission for this next upcoming season, is getting the THICCER kicker on an episode with us.
We just tweet him every day.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do. We should just make him our player of the week every week, even just so he can come on. Looks like totally just make something
every
up.
week.
Dude, you've been our 7 weeks running player of the week.
Let me tell you something, bro. You are the best player we've ever seen. Like, there's no competition.
Come talk to us. All right, let's jump into this. So this list. So what we're going to do here for this segment is we're going to run through, and this came from Jeffrey Chadiha, NFL.com. Chadia, I don't know. I kind of might have totally butchered that. Sorry, man. But these are the 10 bold predictions for the 2025 season. So what Scotty and I are going to do is we're going to run through this list. I feel like we should go we should go bottoms up, because I feel like the juicy ones are on top. Maybe that's how we do that. Do you want to do it that way?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm in.
So we're going to start so he goes 1 through 10. We're going to go 10 to 1. I feel like that is kind of indicative of the juiciness that comes out of this list. And we're just going to get a confidence level, 1 out of 10, how we feel likely this is to happen ahead of the 2025 NFL season. All right. First one for you, Scotty. Fan favorite for us, number 10 on this list. Bold prediction: Kirko Chains will start for a new team this year.
Okay, so 10 is like, I agree.
10 is it's going to happen. 1 is no shot in hell.
I'm going to give this a 9.6. I mean, I agree 100%. I think ultimately, okay, maybe not 100%, 99.6%.
I was going to say, you just gave us your percent.
That's my bad. 9.6, final answer. But no, I agree. Kirk Cousins has been royally screwed by the Falcons. Basically the entire reason he went there is because he was like, yeah, the Vikings are ready to kind of draft some young blood, and I want to stick around for the rest of my career and kind of be the guy. And then he went to the Falcons fully expecting that to be the case, and then they just out of nowhere surprised everyone, including like 80% of the people in their front office, and drafted Penix. And, Kirk Cousins last year, he didn't have a great season. First year with this new coaching staff, first year with this new team and this new place. Like, you can forgive the guy for not playing out of his freaking mind. And also, he's been playing with Justin Jefferson for the last several years. So, like, that's a big change in and of itself. But he played well enough that they were competing for the division. Like, it's not like they were getting blown out. It's not like it was so pathetic. But they decided to make the switch for some reason. And I think, in the long run, it may end up being a good decision. But at the time, it was just a weird thing, the way that all of these things played out. And I think Kirk Cousins is probably over it. And most importantly, I think he's good enough to be a starter at a lot of different places. He's not going to blow you out of the water, but he is competent. He's a good leader. He's been there before, and he can deliver the ball. So I think that he's going to want out of there, and I think they're going to come to a mutual agreement where, like, hey, we're paying you a bunch of money to sit on the bench. We don't really want to do that.
Right. I agree. I feel like your Justin Jefferson comment was a dig at Kyle Pitts, but I'm going to let that slide. I'm with you. I think I was going to say like 8.8, like highly likely. I think they're going to move him before the season. I think a team's going to get into the thralls of training camp or look at their roster again, kind of get everybody together and be like, we could really use somebody to like hold this, for right now. And I don't know who that's going to be. It always pops up with an injury or somebody gets hurt, but I agree. I think he's going to be the top of the list for a lot of these teams. And for a lot of what you just mentioned, like he fell into a situation that was not ideal. He was recovering from an injury, so he was not 100%. They were working through a lot of new things as a staff. It's not like he was coming into a set way in Atlanta, and then he was obviously new. And I think he was embraced by the city. And I don't think he got truly a fair shake. I think that team had numerous issues and problems that they were trying to navigate. But I agree. I think they're ready to turn the page though as well, because like you said, they have Penix, and so they want to see what their futures hold. And I think there's still a lot of value they can get, dealing Kirko somewhere else. But he has that massive contract with him right now, so we'll see how that front office. But I'd agree. I think largely more likely than not that he plays for a new team in 2025.
I wouldn't even consider this a bold prediction.
No, I was just going to say
this is just a likely thing that's going to play out that everyone kind of expects.
I agree. All right, number 9 on this list. This one takes us to the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb will break the single season reception record of 149. He logged 135 receptions in 2023. And remember, this is Jeffrey from NFL.com. These are his bold predictions. So he's saying CeeDee Lamb's going to break the single season reception record. I will start with this one, and I'm going to say like 1.9. I'm going to say fairly low. And I would say more because of the addition of Pickens to that roster. I think he's going to take a lot of those away. Not that CeeDee Lamb's not capable, or not that Dax couldn't possibly get him the ball. I just think the spreading of the ball around is probably going to come into play. And I think Pickens is going to get a lot of matchups that are probably more favorable for Dak to throw to. Honestly, I just don't know what happens with this team. I think the Cowboys are also one of those teams that I feel like they could just blow up their whole team in the middle of the season, because they're just like so annoyed with everything going on. So that's where I'm at. Like 1 point something is where I'm at. Where are you at?
Yeah, I was going to go a little bit higher, because ultimately I do think CeeDee Lamb is an incredible talent. And yes, he has benefited from being like the primary, wide receiver 1A, and there's nobody else even close on the team. So that's why he's seen so much work. But ultimately, this offense has a lot of room to grow upward. I mean, we saw them just look absolutely pathetic last year. In 2023, they were a little bit better. But I think that it's possible, but I do not think it's likely. I was going to put it at like a 3.4.
Yeah, fair. Low. Less than 50%. Way less than 50% shot. I agree.
Yeah. If anyone's going to break it, it's going to be one of the names that you expect. It's going to be Jamar Chase. It's going to be Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Jamar Chase, just a beast. Yeah, one of those guys is going to, and I trust their quarterbacks. I trust what's happening in Cincinnati more than I trust what's happening in Dallas. All right, number 8. This one takes us Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter will be more impactful as a corner than a wide receiver in year 1. So this is his rookie year. He will be more impactful as a corner than a wide receiver. Scotty, give it to me.
Well, this one's kind of ambiguous. How do you quantify this? I don't really know, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think that when you look at Travis Hunter and you look at the way he plays, he's a dog. He's someone who is going to do whatever he can at whatever position and whatever situation to give his team the advantage. I think that sort of mentality is better suited for a defensive player. I think he's perfectly capable of being successful on both ends. But the one thing, defense is interesting because, it's routinely said that the easiest transition from college to the NFL is the running back position, because it's basically the same thing. You don't got to learn a whole lot of new things. Everyone's just a little bit bigger and faster. I think it similarly can be applied to corners, because corner is such a difficult position to play. And yes, you're facing off against the best wide receiver talent. It's not easy. Like, no matter who you are, no matter how talented you are, it is a very, very difficult position to play, which is why we see great corners come and then they just vanish. Like, we just never talk
Right.
about them again because it's so hard to maintain that high level of play. But there is something to be said for the fact that it takes a very special kind of person to play that position at a really high level. Travis Hunter is that person. And what I mean by that is someone who is gifted athletically and someone who has great instincts. And that does translate easier than having to learn an entire playbook or learn how to, learn how to make changes on the fly at the line of scrimmage. Like, you have to do some of that at the cornerback position, but ultimately this is just like your athleticism versus their athleticism, your instincts versus, their first moves off the line of scrimmage. And I think he's great at that. I do think he's going to settle into that role a little bit easier than the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're absolutely right. It'll be interesting how they use him and how often they use him. I think he could be wildly impactful on the defensive side, but I think in like key situations like dime and nickel packages where it's maybe more obvious throwing downs rather than him coming up and giving you like rolling up on a running back or blitzing or doing something. Like, I don't think that's where his skill set is because he is so athletic. This one's tough. I'm like 50-50, and I'm not saying that because I have Travis Hunter in a dynasty league where I drafted him obviously to be a wide receiver. This one's tough. I'm torn because I don't think if I'm going to like scope this out and look into the future, I just don't think they're going to put him on defense a ton to where he's like an every down corner making plays. I think it's going to be like key situations where he's coming up and maybe taking away a slot guy, in an obvious passing down or something, or the outs. I don't know. Maybe he rolls up on the one. Who knows? I think as a wide receiver, it's super intriguing because he is so athletic and there's so many ways to get him the ball. But yeah, I'm like 50-50. I'm torn. I really don't have any confidence level one way or the other on this one because I could see it going either way.
Yeah, it really comes down to how they use him. If he, for some reason, ends up playing his time split exactly 50-50, I would agree with this 100%. But I think the much more likely situation is what you've already described, which is where he's playing maybe 10% of the snaps on defense, and the vast majority of his field time is on the offensive side of the ball. And that also makes sense because you don't really want your star player, lowering his shoulder and trying to tackle a running back running a screen play or something. Like, you don't really want to put him in those situations. So I would say that it's more likely, especially with Trevor Lawrence, they feel like there's something cooking here. They want him to be on offense for sure.
Yeah.
So I think if I had to put a numerical value on it, I'd probably put it at like a 3.5-ish.
Yeah.
Just because I don't think he's going to be on defense that much.
That's fair. Yeah. Travis Hunter, it'll be an interesting storyline to follow, for this whole year is like where that is, but that's certainly a bold prediction. Number 7, this one said Ashton Jeanty will rush for 2,000 yards. Would be the first rookie ever and only the 10th player in NFL history to reach that mark. I will take this one first. I'm a very public Ashton Jeanty hater. I don't think he's going to come in and just wreck the league like he has previously. But my confidence level in this being low is not because of that, because I still think he's going to be a really good player. I just don't think he's like the second coming of Jesus. When I was thinking about this one, if I want to stop this Raiders offense, I could probably live with Geno Smith trying to find Brock Bowers more so than I can letting Jeanty just run all over me. And I think teams are probably more likely to stack the box knowing that it's just Brock Bowers. They kind of have to worry about on throwing the ball, but like taking away the running back and what they want to do. And Pete Carroll's going to want to get to that is going to be like top priority, which is going to prevent him to get 2,000 yards, not because he can't do it. I think it's more likely that the defense are going to want to take that away early and often from this Raiders offense. So that's where I'm going to put it like this is like in a 2 range of like my confidence in that happening.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, ultimately the feat is just unheard of for the most part, especially for rookies. It is unheard of, but there are 10 players or there are 9 players who have done this now that Saquon's done it. It's just very rare. It takes a very special talent, and maybe he is that, but that talent coming on a roster where like you said, from the defensive perspective, it's like, okay, how do we stop the Raiders? Okay, they have like 3 playmakers. We'll just focus on those guys. This isn't a team like the Eagles that's stacked at every single position and can do everything well. This is a team that's still figuring it out. So I don't anticipate even if Genty starts to, he puts up 100 yards and a half, does something crazy, they're going to figure it out, because what else are the Raiders going to do? Like, they're not a team that's equipped to just bowl over everybody that they're playing. It's just not going to happen. And not to mention the game script situation. The Raiders are going to be better than they were last year. Everyone seems to think that they're going to be like competing for the division title this year for some reason. I don't think that at all. I think they're going to be playing from behind in a lot of games just because they're a team that's rebuilding and they're trying to figure it out. And I don't think the game script is going to suit Genty, rushing for this many yards every single week all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. The AFC West, once again, is interesting. I feel like we kind of go through this every year or so, where the AFC West tries to reload. But this one feels like more solid than previous years.
Yeah.
Even when the Broncos got Russell Wilson, like, they still had plenty of holes. So you're like, I'm not entirely sure that's going to play out. But I feel like top to bottom, each one of these teams presents something in the AFC West that you're like, damn, that kind of sucks. Like, that's tough.
Well,
that's really
don't
tough.
Say too much about this, because it's going to come up again.
Oh, I know. Sorry, that's a tease. The tease, as we say in the business.
Broadcast tease.
All right, number 6. Daniel Jones will win Comeback Player of the Year. I like this one.
There's no way.
I like this one though. This one would be super, super interesting and really give you a what the fuck to the Giants. I like this. You know what? Okay. Didn't they change what the rules of a Comeback Player of the Year were or something? Wasn't there some hand wringing because it was like, I think people were thinking it's more for injured players rather than players that sucked one year and came back and had a good year. I don't know. I don't
know what the official rules are. It seems like we argue about it every year.
Yeah, well, it's like MVP. It's like most valuable to the league or most valuable to your team, because I think that it changes. Like, are you the best player in the league or are you the most important player on a good team? I think that's very subjective as far as like how you apply. But whatever, it's fan fodder. It's the offseason. I like this one. I'm going to put this one at like a 6.
Ugh.
I like this because I think he does. If Daniel Jones can have the season he did right before he secured the bag, I could see it happening. I could see it being like, damn, this guy, everything changed, scenery change, comes in. Not a lot's expected of him. He doesn't have the bright lights of New York on him. Yeah. I like it. I don't know where your head's at.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see Daniel Jones making a statement or having a statement season where people are like, oh, this guy's not too bad. But that's the reaction I expect. Oh, he's not too bad. I don't expect him to be like, holy shit, look at Daniel Jones. He's crazy. Ultimately, Daniel Jones, even when he was at sort of the top of his game throughout his short career, it was riddled with injuries. It was riddled with all sorts of problems. And yes, he was playing on a team. I mean, they had Saquon, so that's pretty good. But they didn't have a ton of weapons catching the ball from him. And I don't know. I see like the best version of Daniel Jones, someone he's using his legs a lot. And when he does that, he tends to get injured. It's sort of like they have 2 mobile quarterbacks there who are both like, I hope they don't, like, they have glass bones and paper skin situation. Like, they just want one of them to survive. When I think of Comeback Player of the Year and I start rattling through names that might win this, I think Nick Chubb like 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, because that's like a injury, right?
I know he's capable of playing at a very high level. He's playing on a much better team. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns probably. I think of someone like Nick Chubb who can stick his foot in that offense and make a statement and say, "Hey, I'm a key player here."
Yeah, Daniel Jones is going off at about plus 4,000 odds to win Comeback Player of the Year right now.
Who's top?
Your top 3. When you hear the top 3, you're like, "Oh, no shit." I think that makes a ton of sense. Aiden Hutchinson is number 1 on that list. Dak Prescott is number 2 on that list. And then it goes Christian McCaffrey after that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, then you have Rashee Rice is on there. Nick Chubb is down there. Max Crosby's down there. You have some guys down there, but Daniel Jones is
Max Crosby. How many games did Max Crosby miss?
I don't know. That's why like what denotes, like, were they just out for a week, or like how do you get? I don't know. Aiden Hutchinson makes sense because that was a gruesome injury. Like, I think that makes a ton of sense. But that's why I'm wondering, like, what are the I think we need some clear parameters around what makes comeback player of the year. Like, did you just suck for a year or did you get hurt? Like what? Because like I could suck for a year and come back, and I don't know if that makes me comeback player of the year. I'm now performing. I don't know. Okay, let's move on. Another quarterback here. Bold prediction number 5. Caleb Williams will throw for over 4,500 yards and have 35 touchdowns. So I think he had 25 touchdowns last year. So he's tacking on a lot of yards.
He was 3,500 yards. I mean, it's another 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
But
what do we think? Confidence in this with this Bears offense winning the offseason again.
Confidence is a tough word with the Bears. Let me tell you that.
Bears.
Hope is sky high. I want this team to be good. I want
True.
Caleb Williams he can paint his nails and bring his purse into the facility and throw for, however many yards he wants. That's great. I hope that happens because I really want this Bears team to be good. I really want Caleb Williams to be the best quarterback in Bears history. That'd be sweet. But I haven't seen it yet, and I still have a lot of questions about Caleb Williams, about the new coaching staff here. And not to mention, they're in an extremely tough division. They're going to play a lot of really tough opponents, have a really hard schedule. I would put my confidence at like a 6. I think it's...
You wouldn't be shocked if it happened, but you'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And maybe it's closer to a 5 because it's like, I don't think I'm over 50% that I actually think this is going to happen, but it wouldn't shock me. It'd be cool to see, and it wouldn't be that surprising given the roster makeup. And if Ben Johnson's all he's cracked up to be, like, yeah, this offense could hum, but we just haven't seen it yet. So it's just like
Right.
we're just talking out of our assholes a little bit. I have no idea.
Well, yeah, we are on this podcast. We are 100% talking out of our assholes. I like this one. Also, fully bought on to the Bears this offseason. Again, I think getting rid of Eberflus is probably the best thing that could have ever happened to that franchise with this amount of talent they have. I'm going to say I was going to say a 6.5 of like confidence level of this actually happening, because I think an offensive mind coming in with this offense is going to do wonders. I don't know about the rest of the team. Like, I don't know how many games they're going to win, but I think they're going to put up a lot of points and they're going to have a lot of yards. And I don't know what that's going to translate to as far as wins and losses, because who knows? Like, you need a lot of things to work right. But I think the one thing I feel most confident in, I feel in this Bears team coming into next thing is that they are going to put players in the right position to make plays and give Caleb Williams the right reads and put the ball in the hands of the playmakers quickly, so that he's not having to scramble like he was last year and having to throw it all over the place. So
that's the one thing. Like, if you drop this down to 4,000 yards, I think it jumps up to like an 8.5 for me instead of 4,500, because an extra 1,000 yards is like, that's a lot of yards. But you could definitely see them making up, 400 or 500 yards just by having some semblance of a competent offense. You just saw Caleb Williams. He threw for 3,500 yards, and he looked like a doofus half the time because the offense was just totally discombobulated. Right. And he had teammates just walking off the field in the middle of plays. Like, it was just crazy. It was chaos there. And Matt Eberflus was too busy getting his hair cut. Like, it was weird. It was weird. And this year, it feels like, even if everyone's not as like crazy good as people are hyping them up to be in the media, it feels like they're definitely going to take a step forward. And it doesn't take that much of a step forward for Caleb Williams to look a lot better on the stat sheets.
I agree. Hoping for big things. Wasn't that our adopted team? Didn't we say the Bears are our adopted? Okay, yeah. So our adopted team, we hope they do well this year. All right. Scotty, this one's juicy.
Okay.
Everybody's been preying on the downfall. We'll see. Bold prediction here. Number 4 says Broncos will snap Kansas City's streak of 9 straight AFC West titles. Not what you want to happen. Likelihood.
Likelihood, I would put it at a 5.5.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it specifically says Broncos.
Yeah, the Broncos
4, maybe
gives
4.
me a little pause because. Yeah, go ahead. Because sorry, I was in the same. Same mindset.
If it was just the Chiefs are going to take an off year and struggle, I mean, that's always possible. But I will say that my expectation for this Chiefs team is that the defense is going to be pretty much as good as it was last year, and the offense is going to take a massive step forward. My expectations are through the roof for this team right now, and I am expecting the Chiefs to look like they did in 2019. And with that said, none of the other teams in the division are going to catch them if that step forward happens. Because yes, the Broncos have a lot to look forward to. They have a great defense as well. And they've Bo Nix is playing well. They're going to take a step forward. Maybe Harbaugh is going to take a big step forward over there, and the Raiders are getting better. Like, yeah, everybody's getting better, but I expect the Chiefs to look like people are going to remember what Patrick Mahomes looked like when he first came into the league this year. That's my prediction. So I don't think it's likely that the Broncos, take him out.
Right. I had this one at about a 4 out of 10. And let me give you the reasoning, not because the Broncos aren't capable, but what we just said previously about the AFC West. It's not, there are 4 capable teams, I feel like. And the Raiders may be a little bit more distant, but they certainly have the ability to go up and jump at somebody. And I'm really interested to see how this Broncos team moves forward. Like, if they look at themselves like, oh, we are the next best thing, obviously they're going to have the Chiefs circled. But how often are they going to have the Chargers and Raiders also circled? Because this division will get you. And you may be looking at the Chiefs, but like, if you let the rest of this AFC or the division get you, you're going to have problems. Also, the Broncos schedule gets a little harder. Yes, it is easier to win a few more games when you were in last place in the AFC West and you get to play the last place schedule. Shit changes when you actually have to step up and play some of these other top teams more regularly rather than just kind of like limping through. And even in that Chiefs game where they blocked the field goal, the Broncos were 5-5. It wasn't, it was still plenty of opportunity for the Chiefs to win the division overall. And so everybody wants the thing to end that their demise. And if you think about it, the Chiefs make it a decade of excellence. That is absolutely insane from this team. And this predates Mahomes, right? This is an Andy Reid. This is an Andy Reid stat. This has nothing to do with Mahomes.
I honestly, it's an Andy Reid stat because he's been around that long. Every other team in the division has gone through like 4 coaches over that span. So it's like, this is,
as a Chiefs fan, I never thought I'd see this like level of excellence. So I'm just like, whatever, everybody can pray on the downfall. That's fine. I'm going to say a decent chance of happening because anything can happen with any team, but also the Chiefs won the division last year with half their offense hurt. So let's see what happens when it's fully healthy.
And Jawan Taylor is
we don't have to talk about.
Yeah, please.
We'll have a whole episode of things that hurt us. We'll spend like an hour talking about things that hurt us. All right. This one's interesting to me. Number 3, Eagles will repeat as NFC East champs. And if I just read that, you would say, well, no shit. They just won the Super Bowl and they're the most stacked team in the NFL. The second part is this division has not had a repeat champion in 21 years, meaning somebody new. They've not had a back-to-back winner of this division. We just talked about how the Chiefs are trying to go 10 in a row, and it's been 21 years for this division to have a back-to-back.
It's crazy.
And remember, I think that the top 3 in this division, in my opinion, very clearly are the Eagles, followed by the Commanders, and then the Cowboys kind of right there, and then the Giants after that, which we talked about what the Giants are going through. And so basically what you're saying is it's going to be the Eagles, the first one to do it in back-to-back years. Confidence level, Scotty, go.
I would put it at a 6.5. I think the Eagles are the best team in the division, bar none. But it's similar to the last conversation we had about the AFC West because there is a lot of talent on these teams, and we don't know what the ceiling is yet for this young Commanders team that now has just stars everywhere. I mean, they're one of the winners of the offseason too. We talk about the Bears winning the offseason. The Commanders have also won the offseason for 2 years because they got Jaden Daniels and they shored up a lot of pieces on this team on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. It would not surprise me if that team is one of the top tier teams in the NFL. And then we know what the Cowboys are capable of. They have the talent on their roster. They just have to figure it out. And right now, I think they're more likely to, burst into flames and be thrown into a dumpster. But they're almost equally as likely to be like, oh, the Cowboys are back, and they're, they've won 11 games in the regular season already. And it's like I could see that happening too. The Eagles are a team that is going to be difficult to contend with, but at the end of the day, when you're in a division like this and you're playing so many tough opponents and you're coming off a Super Bowl win, your schedule is going to be really hard. We've already seen the Eagles collapse just recently. So we know that's capable. That's potentially going to happen. So it wouldn't surprise me, but a lot can happen. So 6.5.
6. Yeah, I would agree. I think mine's like up to an 8 for me. And I largely agree with everything you said. I just think this team is just really, really difficult matchup for every team in the NFL right now. They are loaded at every position. They have playmakers. It all comes down to 2 things, which I think people still are questioning overall, right or wrong. And Eagles fans will hate this, is their quarterback and their head coach. And those are probably the two most important pieces, obviously, of any team. And Hurts is really good, and he showed up well in he's shown up well in 2 Super Bowls. And I think that's the thing that's so funny is during the regular season, he's kind of like, he'll go out there, he'll get the job done. But then when the lights were freaking on, he was a whisper away from beating the Chiefs, and then obviously got his revenge and destroyed the Chiefs the next time. So he's obviously very capable. For me, it comes down to Nick Sirianni. I still think he is wildly overrated as a coach. I think he's just like a good locker room manager. He gave up all of his head coach, like his play calling duties. He doesn't do much on defense. I think he should be thanking his stars that he's involved with an organization and a GM like Howie that can give him what he has. And I think honestly it suits him because he just has to manage the players. Like when you have that much talent, honestly, that's kind of what it is. But like you alluded to, we saw where that unraveled rather quickly, where they had a first round exit in Tampa against the Buccaneers the year prior. So this team has high highs and low lows, and it's just kind of like, which one are you going to get? But I think, the Eagles were also very close to losing to the Rams in the playoffs at home, and it was a snow game, but they could have been tripped up much earlier. And so it's not like they were beating everybody 50-0 and then won the Super Bowl 50-0. They have their own problems as well, and we'll see how they address those. And we'll see, sometimes winning takes the wind out of the sails of a team that's trying to win. AJ Brown really famously said after the Super Bowl win, he was like, I thought things would be much different, but I'm back on the grind. It's like you don't really get a break. It's like once you win, I think this is what fans fail to recognize. Just because you won something doesn't mean it's over and nobody gets to win it ever again. Now you got to go back and do it again. And you got to go back and do it again. It's like it never ends. So like you get to enjoy it for a second, but then it's like you're either on the train again or you're not. And I think that's it's going to be up to the Eagles whether or not they win this division. It has not going to be up to anybody else.
So you mentioned something there that I just want to elaborate on a little bit. You talked about Jalen Hurts. And yes, no question, when the lights are the brightest, this guy is a killer. Like he comes out and does his thing. But the reason that Jalen Hurts constantly gets brought up in this conversation is simply because the offense seems like it could probably function just fine without him, which, puts words in your mind like role player or system quarterback. And I think Jalen Hurts is not a system quarterback. He obviously has special talent that is sort of unique to him, especially when it comes to his size and his strength and his leadership qualities. I think Jalen Hurts is one of the best, leaders in terms of his demeanor. I love that about him. That's probably my favorite thing about Jalen Hurts. But what that brings to mind is Brock Purdy. And we've touched on this a little bit in the past, but everyone is not afraid to shit on Brock Purdy. But if you say one bad thing about Jalen Hurts, they're like, oh, look at this, all the success that he's had. How could you possibly say that about Jalen Hurts?
Right.
I see these guys as like very similar in terms of their impact on their teams. I think Brock Purdy is actually a better quarterback when it comes to quarterback mechanics. When it comes to impact on the field, Jalen Hurts is probably like if I had to draft one of them, I would probably draft Jalen Hurts just because of that X factor, his athleticism, his size, his strength. But I do think they're in the same conversation, and I think a lot of the arguments that you make for one or the other can be applied to the other one just because they're playing on talented teams. They have a good system around them. Obviously Purdy's got the solid head coach, and the Eagles have the great front office who's putting all these weapons on the field. Like they both have a lot of things going their way. I think they're right there in the same conversation.
I agree. I think that's an interesting take because you look at him, you're like, this is apples to oranges. Like, he squats, a city and the other guy, doesn't. And so, but I think what you're alluding to and what this all boils down to is that they are fits for their teams. Yeah. And they would not work if you swapped them.
Yeah.
Like they would struggle mightily if you swapped them. Like I think.
Well, I don't know. I think you put Brock Purdy on the Eagles and he just has to hand it off to Saquon a lot. He'd probably be all right.
Yeah, I don't know.
The best offense in football, the best offensive line in football.
Maybe. I think it takes, like you said, I think it takes a special leader for that team. I think because there's so many personalities, I think I could see Brock Purdy on the Eagles basically getting shit on by his wide receiver room.
Definitely.
Like, F you, versus Jalen Hurts, where I feel like he commands that room, and maybe he's not the best mechanical quarterback or stereotypical of like, hey, I can get the ball, but I think he does what that team needs, right? And Brock Purdy's the same way, because I think if you put Jalen Hurts on the 49ers, I'd be like, dude, you need to throw this ball over here, and you need to do this, and we don't need you to do that, And I think I think that's an interesting take. I agree largely. So mixed bag. I think though we're largely supportive that the the Eagles will repeat and be the first repeat winner of that division in 21 years.
Be
All right,
sick.
number 2. We got the final 2 here. These are pretty juicy. Number 2, Joe Burrow wins NFL MVP this year.
This is interesting because of what the first one is, which we haven't said yet. I think if the first one happens, then this one is certainly not going to happen.
You think
because
so?
I think we're going to, well, not certainly, but I think we'll talk
Okay,
about
let's
it.
just do it. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's talk about both because I think you're right. So number 1 is the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, which if you go to Vegas, they're actually the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So this isn't like an extremely bold prediction, but it's basically falls in line with the market. So number 2 being Joe Burrow wins the MVP. Number 1 saying the Bills win the Super Bowl. Scotty, you're saying if the Bills win the Super Bowl, then Joe Burrow cannot win the MVP.
Yeah, I wouldn't say cannot. Obviously, it's possible. But I think that in order for the Bills to win the Super Bowl, they're going to have a pretty spectacular season, even by their standards, which has already been good, already been very good. So I think that if they're competing for a Super Bowl, that means Josh Allen is killing it. And I just think that storyline is going to be more attractive to voters. And I think that Josh Allen would end up winning the MVP again. But Joe Burrow certainly is capable of it. The thing that is going to bring Joe Burrow down is the same thing that brought him down in 2024, which is his defense is probably going to be ass. And they just haven't made enough changes on that defensive side. And yeah, the offense is all there. It's all intact. Joe Burrow's going to throw for 1 billion yards, but they're going to lose a ton of games that they should not lose because their defense is bad. And maybe their defense takes a huge step forward and they don't have that problem anymore, but I haven't throughout this offseason seen a lot of hope that that's going to be the case. They're already having contract disputes with all these star players. It just doesn't seem like that's going to happen to me. So it's difficult to award someone an MVP when they have a great offensive season, but their team is barely making it into the playoffs or missing the playoffs altogether. It's difficult for that to happen.
Yeah, I agree. So the one thing I'll say kind of against this notion that if the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, that it's more likely that Josh Allen wins. I think a lot of people didn't even think Josh Allen should have won the MVP this year. If you look at statistically, I think a lot of people look at his MVP this year as being like a career achievement thing. Like this guy's got to win something at some point because he's so good. And I mean, I agree, but I mean, there's a lot of people that didn't win MVP that should have. I mean, very famously, Drew Brees never did. And he's considered one of the greatest quarterbacks to play in the NFL and holds a lot of records, and he never won the MVP. So I think even with his stats this year, they were very close to being in the Super Bowl, they were right there. And I think, so I do think where those coexist. Now, for argument's sake about these happening, I would agree. I don't think Joe Burrow is going to win the MVP just because of what you said. But from a Vegas perspective, he does have the third best odds to win it. Josh Allen has the best, followed by Lamar, then Joe, then Pat. I think any one of those four is probably going to win it again. I agree with you. I think Pat's going to be on a revenge tour, and I don't think
100%.
I don't think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl this year just because that's really hard to do. But I think he's going to go out swinging, and I think he's going to put the team on his back. So he's actually my MVP favorite going into this year. As far as the Bills winning the Super Bowl, I kind of like that one. I think they're very, very close. I think they're finding something. Now, the thing that throws a wrench in this is the running back situation, which they've leaned on heavily last year. And I think if that is still in flux and in doubt going into the season, that's going to hurt this team's chemistry bad. And I think they had something last year that they were working with. And I think Josh Allen is finding out how to play the game where he is not needing to throw, for 1 billion touchdowns to do it, which is kind of ironic because that's kind of what a lot of people feel like is needed. So I would say of these two most likely to happen, I would say the Bills winning the Super Bowl most likely to happen. The Joe Burrow winning the MVP least likely of those two.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are possible. Winning the Super Bowl is really hard. Winning the MVP is a little bit less difficult because you just have to perform and then you just have to have some, good luck in the media pretty much. It's just it's a popularity contest more than anything. Right. And the stats for, Josh Allen winning the MVP, I wouldn't argue with it at all because it's not the stats. It's not a statistical award to me. It is impact. And Josh Allen, there is no doubt. You put almost any other quarterback on that team, that Bills team is significantly worse. Yeah. And you have to combine that with on-the-field success. So if you number one, you make such a big impact on your team, and number two, your team is winning games. And Josh Allen fits the bill perfectly. So I would not argue with the fact that he won the MVP, and it wouldn't surprise me if he won it again and again and again and again, because that's just the kind of impact that he has for this team. I hope the Bills get a Super Bowl. Obviously, I would prefer the Chiefs to have it, but I've said this actually for several years. If the Chiefs weren't going to win the Super Bowl, I hoped it was the Bills.
I agree.
Because I love Josh Allen. I love this team. I think McDermott said some hilarious stuff that's kept me entertained, so that's fun. But ultimately, it would be cool to see Buffalo see that success. And it wouldn't surprise me either. I think I have so much faith in Josh Allen. There are lots of people who say, well, Josh Allen shouldn't be ranked above Joe Burrow, or shouldn't be ranked above Lamar. I would take Josh Allen above almost anybody in the league. And it's just his personality, the way he carries himself, his leadership capabilities, his talent on the field, what he's shown, how he's grown. Like, he's just everything you want in a quarterback.
I agree. And this is sacrilege to say because of how we sit as Chiefs fans, but it would be, if you could like redo everything and put Josh Allen and give him Andy Reid and an offensive mind and like how to grow and develop and like use the proper way, it'd be interesting to see where his career trajectory is now compared. And it's a fit thing. Like, there's nothing you can do about it, but it is interesting because I do think Josh Allen is the only other quarterback that I'm like, you know what? You could almost swap him for Pat and maybe get similar numbers out of it. And I know that's sacrilegious to say, and we're all supposed to be fanboys on Twitter or whatever, but like, I think if you're like looking at it objectively, you're like, you know what? There actually is a lot of transferable skills here that you're like, Pat's not running guys over or hurdling anybody. And that's what his team needs. And he's doing it. And I feel like that would transfer to every other team. And I think those are the only two quarterbacks that you're like, I could put them anywhere else and it'll work, versus the other, everybody else at the quarterback position, like, hey, that they're kind of in unique situations for them, or situations that they need to have thrive. Like Joe Burrow needs to have a ridiculous wide receiver core, like that's what people are going to say, right or wrong. That's just what they're going to say. Like, he needs to have the best wide receivers at his disposal. And then Jalen Hurts is going to be like, well, he's got to have, the offensive line, and, Lamar Jackson's got to just have a regular season schedule that allows him to put up a lot of points. So I agree. I think this will be an interesting year overall because there's a lot of interesting storylines. I think, the Chiefs not needing to be, they're still going to be hunted, but they're not coming off the championship hoopla. There's not going to be that back to back to back. There's the Eagles now are squarely in everybody's crosshairs. And so it'll be interesting to see how these things come to fruition. But I think, by and large, what we're going to see is like an ultra competitive AFC again, and then a kind of lopsided NFC again, where maybe you have like 2 or 3 teams that are considered really, really good and everybody else is falling out. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Anything else, Scotty?
No, I think that's it. I think we squeezed all the juice out of that lemon.
Yeah, we did.
It was good.
I think we did really good. I think Slapdog would be very, very proud of us. I'm excited to see what Dad thinks of us on this one. Appreciate it. Appreciate anybody listening. Make sure you follow us on all our socials, on YouTube, X, Spotify, Apple, wherever the hell we are, a jukebox. I'm not sure exactly where this podcast gets broadcast from, but make sure you follow us, especially on X. We are in Instagram. We pump out a lot of great content, a lot of nuggets for you. We have some very, very talented artists in there pumping out graphics and giving us some good things to chew on this off season. Appreciate you all listening. Scotty, this was great. Until next time, we
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out LeatherBrainz.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.